Welcome. Settle in and take your time getting comfortable. There is no hurry here, and nothing in the next 2 hours will ask anything of you. We're going to Japan, to the city of Edo, in the spring of 1830. Out in the mouth of the river, there is a small, low island of fishing families, and we will spend one ordinary day with a man who lives there. There will be tides and nets and the long row to the market and a lantern on black water late at night. Nothing important happens. You are not meant to hear the end of it. Sleep well. We begin in the dark, before dawn. It is the hour before dawn on a small island in the mouth of a river, and the water is moving past it in the dark with a sound so steady that you would have to stop and listen to hear it at all. The island is low and flat, and hardly more than a village. Wooden houses, a few boats drawn up, the smell of salt and tar in the flats. Across the water lies the city, a mile of darkness with almost no light in it yet. The river goes on turning against the piles. You are already awake. You lie a moment longer on the mat under the quilt, listening, and out over the water a bell sounds, the last bell of the night, carried thin across the estuary from a temple on the far bank. The hours here are not all the same length. They are counted from dusk to dawn, and from dawn to dusk, and divided up, so that in spring the hours of the night are short ones, and this one has gone very quickly. You push the quilt back. The house is still dark, and nobody lights more than they need to. There is cold rice from yesterday, and pickles out of the crock, and tea, and you eat sitting on the boards near the door, with the sound of the water coming in through the gap. Someone else in the house is awake and moving about behind you, doing something quiet with a cloth and a bucket. Nobody talks much at this hour. There is no need to, since everyone already knows what the morning is for. Outside, the first thing is the tide. You stand a while at the edge of the drawn-up boat and read it. How far down the water has gone, which way it is running, and how fast. How much of the flats is showing, and how much is still covered. It is going out now, and it will carry you out with it if you go soon, and bring you home later without much asking. Everything else in the day follows from that one reading. You have been making it since you were a child. You go down over the mud. It is soft and cold, and it holds your feet for a moment before it lets them go, and the whole flat smells of it, of salt and weed and shellfish and river. The boat is where you left it, sitting over on one side, waiting for the water to come back under it. You put a hand on the hull. The rope is wet and swollen and stiff with the cold, and it takes a little working with your fingers before the knot gives and comes loose. Then the boat is floating, and you are in it, and you set the long oar over the stern. and begin to work it, side to side, the way a fish moves its tail. It does not splash. There is a slow wooden creak against the pin and a soft turning of water under the hull. And those two sounds are the whole of it. The island goes back behind you into the dark, low and quiet, and the open water of the estuary comes out to meet the boat. The river mouth widens as you go, and you feel it before you can see it. The water under the hull stops being river water and starts being something bigger and slower, with a longer swell in it that lifts the boat and sets it down again without hurrying. The banks fall away on either side into low, dark shapes. There is more sky than there was. The oar goes on turning, and the sound of it seems smaller now, out in all that open air. The dark is not quite dark anymore. It has gone the colour of wet slate, and the difference between the water and the sky has begun to show itself as a line, low and far off, with nothing on it yet. You can make out the shape of your own hands on the oar. Somewhere behind you a bird goes over, low and unhurried, and you hear the wings and not the bird. The bay opens out ahead, wide and pale and empty. Nothing is out on it yet that you can see. Light comes into this kind of morning slowly, and from underneath. First, the water goes silver in patches where it is moving. Then the mist that has been sitting on it all night begins to show as mist rather than as darkness, lying in long, low banks that the boat goes quietly through. The far shore comes back one piece at a time. None of it is sudden. By the time you notice that you can see, you have been able to see for a while. If the air is clear, and this morning it is, there is a mountain on the western sky. It stands a long way off beyond the far side of the bay, white at the top and blue below, so faint in this light that it looks less like a thing than a thought about a thing. Most mornings the haze takes it. You look at it for as long as it takes to be sure that it is there, and then you go back to the water. You are going to a particular place, and you know how to find it without anything written down. It is a matter of lining things up. A temple roof on the far shore, brought level with a stand of pines. A headland set against the gap between two hills, and holding the boat where those things agree. Your father taught you the marks, and his father taught him. On a morning with mist, you go slower and wait for the marks to show themselves. The water here is shallow, and the bottom is sand and mud, and that is why the fish are here. It shelves so gradually that you can go a long way out and still put an oar down and touch. The bay is enormous and shallow like a dish, and most of what lives in it lives close to the bottom, moving with the tide, so that where the fish are this morning is not quite where they were the night before. None of it is ever quite the same twice. These grounds belong to the island, in the sense that anything belongs to anyone here. The families were brought east generations ago, from a fishing village near a city far away on the other sea, and settled on this bank of mud in the river mouth, and given the right to work the bay. It was not a gift exactly. It came with something owed in return, and the owing has come down the years along with the right, so that the two of them are not really separable now. So there are waters that are yours to fish, and waters that are not, and everyone knows which are which without a map. Boats from other villages have their own grounds, and keep to them, mostly. Where exactly the edges run is a thing discussed at length by older men who no longer go out, and settled in practice by whoever is there first. Quietly, with no argument that anybody would still remember by the evening, and none at all that anyone would carry home to the island. You bring the boat round and let it lose its way until it is barely moving, and then the work starts. The net comes up out of the bottom of the boat, where it has been lying folded since yesterday, and it comes up damp and cold and heavier than it looks, smelling of the last catch and of the tar it was dressed with. You find the end of it. Everything after this depends on the net going out in the right order. It always has been, and it always will be. You pay it over the side a little at a time, floats along the top and waits along the bottom, so that it hangs in the water like a fence rather than lying on the floor of the bay in a heap. The boat drifts as you feed it out, and the drift is doing half the work. Your hands know this without being told. They find the tangles before your eyes do, and shake them out, and let the net go on running. You long ago stopped watching them do it. When the last of it is over the side, the line of floats sits on the surface in a long, shallow curve, showing where the net is standing under the water. It looks like almost nothing. A row of small dark shapes on grey water, already hard to see from any distance at all. You take the boat back along it once to be sure of the shape, and then you stop and ship the oar, and there is nothing to do. So you sit down in the stern and wait. Waiting is a large part of this. The boat sits and turns slowly on the tide, the way a leaf turns, and you sit in it, with your hands inside your sleeves for the warmth of them. The light goes on coming up. You are not thinking about very much at all. Somewhere off to the left, another boat is doing the same thing, and if you watch it long enough, you can see that it too is doing nothing. Patiently. It is a companionable enough sort of nothing to be doing. Then it is time, and you take the boat to the near end and start to bring the net back. It comes slowly. The first part of it is only wet mesh and cold water running off your wrists, and there is a stretch where you begin to think there is nothing in it at all. That happens often enough. Then the weight changes. Not much, but you feel it come on, and you go on hauling with a little more attention. There is something in it after all. What comes over the side comes in bursts, a length of empty mesh, then a knot of movement, then empty again. The fish arrive turning and bright and astonishing against the dull, wet wood of the boat, and there is a moment every single morning of something like surprise, even after all these years of the same thing happening in the same way. You keep hauling, hand over hand, at the same steady rate. The net goes down into the bottom of the boat behind you in a wet and growing heap. There is sea bream, which is the best of it, and the one that decides whether this is a good day, silver pink and deep-bodied and thrashing. There is gizzard shad, small and oily and plentiful, the fish of ordinary meals in ordinary houses. Flounder come up flat and pale and lie perfectly still, looking like part of the boat. And there are prawns, translucent and jumping, and crabs that go sideways at once for the shadow under the thwart. All of it goes down into the bottom of the boat together. There is also everything else the bay contains, and does not care whether you want it. Weed, in green and brown ropes, heavy with water. Shells, a piece of somebody's rope. Small fish of no name and no worth. Mud in a smear along the foot of the net, and the smell of the bottom coming up with it, which is the smell of the whole bay turned over. Salt and rot and something green underneath all of it. Not unpleasant once you have smelled it every day for 30 years. Sometimes there is a conger, which is nobody's favourite thing to find in a net at this hour, and which has to be dealt with carefully and without hurry. Sometimes a mullet, which is fine. Once in a while, something that has no business in the bay at all, come in from the deeper water on a tide, and you look at it a moment longer than you look at the rest, turning it over once in your hand before it goes in with the others. Not all of it stays. You sort as you go by hand, without thinking about it very hard. This into the well, this back over the side, this into the basket. What goes back because it is too small, or because nobody buys it, or because it is not the season for it. It goes over the side and is gone in a second, and there is no ceremony in any of it. Only the flick of a wrist. The gulls know the sound of it and come at once. There is a kind of arithmetic in the sorting that you never have to say out loud. Small fish are worth almost nothing fresh but something dried or simmered, so they stay. Weed goes back, except the kind that does not. A fish that has come up dead is worth less than one that has not, and goes into a different place in the boat. All of this happens with your hands while you are looking at something else entirely. Your eyes are on the water, or the far shore, or nothing, The best of it goes into the well. There is a compartment in the middle of the boat, open to the bay through holes bored in the planking, so that the water in it is river water and changes as you move. Fish put in there stay alive, swimming in a slow, crowded circle. And a fish that is still alive when it reaches the market is a different thing altogether and worth a different price from a fish that is not. That is the entire reason the well is there at all. There is no ice in this country, and no way to keep a dead fish fresh for more than a few hours in weather that is not freezing. So the well is the whole answer. Everything about the day after this, how fast you go, when you leave, which way you come at the city, is arranged around fish being still alive at the far end of it, when somebody lifts them out of the water and turns them over and looks at them properly. Some of what is in the boat is not yours. That is the other half of the old arrangement. The island holds its rights in the bay, and in return, a share of what comes out of it goes up to the castle kitchens, and has done since before your grandfather was born. It is not taken from you at the point of a spear. It is simply the part of the morning that is spoken for before the morning begins. Nobody on the island has ever questioned it in your hearing. So you set aside what is owed, and it is the good fish and not the poor ones, because that is the entire point of it. Sea bream mostly, and whatever else is fine that day. They go into a separate part of the well, and there is a man on the island whose business it is to see them counted and sent on, and he will be down at the water waiting for the boats when you come back in, as he is every morning of the year. From the island it goes up river by boat, in water, still swimming, and it is somebody else's business after that. You have never seen the kitchens it goes to, and you never will. It is simply a direction that a certain number of fish travel in every day of the year. The way the tide is a direction that water travels in, and you no more resent it than you resent the tide going out, which is to say that it has never once occurred to you to try. The rest is yours to sell, and selling it means going into the city. You take the boat back into the river mouth, with the last of the ebb helping you, and then against the first of the flood, which is harder work, and the hardest of it comes when the boat is heaviest. You settle into it. It is not far. It is far enough that you do it with your whole body and stop noticing that you are doing it. By the time you notice anything again, the bridges have started. The city gathers on both banks as you go up. Warehouses first, long and blank and shuttered, with their feet in the water and boats tied under them. Then the backs of houses, leaning out over the river. Then bridges, and under each one, the sound of the oar comes back at you off the stone for a moment, and then lets go again. There's more on the water the further you go. and all of it going your way. The river narrows, and the traffic on it thickens accordingly. The fish market sits on the riverbank in the middle of everything, and you smell it and hear it a good while before you are near it. It is not a building. It is a stretch of bank and a mass of boats and a crowd of men on wet stone, and it has been going since long before dawn, so that by the time you arrive, it is already at its height and beginning, very slightly, to think about being over. The smell of it reaches you first, and then the noise does. You bring the boat in among the others, and there is a great deal of maneuvering, gently. Everyone here doing this every day of their lives, and nobody hurrying more than they have to. Fish come out of wells in nets and buckets. Water goes everywhere. There is shouting, but it is the shouting of men who have shouted the same words for 20 years and are not angry. Prices, names, a joke, and then the same joke again. The one that was funny a long time ago. Selling happens fast, and mostly without words that a stranger would be able to follow. A buyer comes along the line of boats, looking down into the wells, and he has been doing this as long as you have been fishing, and he knows what you have before you tell him. There is a short exchange. There is a pause in it that means something. Then it is agreed, and the fish are lifted out, and the two of you are already looking at other things. From here, it goes out into the city in 100 directions and stops being anything to do with you. Some of it will be salted or simmered and put away. Some will be sold on again before noon. Some will be bought by men with stalls and eaten standing up in the street tonight, grilled over charcoal, or fried in batter, or laid raw across a pad of vinegared rice by somebody working very fast with his hands. None of that has anything further to do with you. The price is not a fixed thing, and the largest part of what decides it is simply the hour. Fish that comes in first, while the buyers are still hungry for it and little else has arrived, is worth what fish is worth. An hour later, with the bank full of it, the same fish in the same condition is worth noticeably less. Nobody is being unfair. It is only that the city wants fish early and does not want it late. Everyone here has understood that for a very long time. So a good day is partly the catch, and partly the tide, and partly what the weather was doing 3 days ago, and partly what everyone else happened to bring in on the same morning. There are days when you row up with a full well and come home with less than you expected, and days when a thin catch sells well, because the bank is empty. You stopped taking either of them personally a very long time ago, and you are the better for it. Then the boat is empty and light, And going home is a different thing entirely. It rides high. It answers the oar at once instead of grudging it. The flood is under you now and doing most of the work. And you go back down through the bridges with the city fully awake above you. Feet on the boards, a cart somewhere, a shutter going up. All of it happening to somebody else up there. And none of it any of yours. The oar hardly has to work at all now. This is the easiest hour of the day, and you know it while it is happening, which is not always true of easy hours. Nothing is owed until tomorrow. The sun is properly up now, and there is some warmth in it on your back and shoulders. The river runs brown and busy around the boat. You are not in a hurry, and neither this morning is the tide. And the two of you go down towards the bay together. It is the 1 hour of the day that asks nothing. The island comes up ahead low and brown, with the smoke of its cooking fires going straight up in the still air. It is a small place. You could walk from one end of it to the other in the time it takes a pot to come to the boil. In this light, it is all roofs and drying frames and upturned boats, and the water around it is crowded with the boats that came in before you did. The tide is very nearly full. The smoke goes straight up, which is a good sign there. You bring the boat in on the last of the flood and get her tied. And the man who counts the castle share is there on the bank as he always is. And that business is done in a few minutes without anybody saying very much at all. Then the boat is yours again. You stand a moment on the wet stones with the ache coming up into your shoulders now that it is finally allowed to. And you stand there and let it come. Then you go on up the stones. The net comes out of the boat in one great armful and goes up the beach. And it is heavy and cold and unwilling. And it takes both arms and a good deal of your back. You spread it out on the stones above the tide line, where the sun and the wind can get at it. Wet net rots. A net that is not dried and looked after will be useless within a season, and a net is not a small thing to replace, so it goes up the beach every day without fail. Then you walk the length of it looking, which is slower work than it sounds. You are not looking for holes so much as for the beginnings of them. A mesh gone thin, a knot working itself loose, a place where something heavy has dragged and pulled it out of square. Your eye finds these without much effort now. Your hands go to them before you have quite finished deciding that you have seen anything at all. It is a strange sort of knowing, and you no longer question it. Where there is a hole, you sit down on the stones with the net across your knees and mend it, with a wooden needle and a length of twine, tying the same knot your hands have tied several 100,000 times. It is not difficult, and it is not quick. The sun is on your back. Further down the beach, other men are sitting doing exactly this. And nobody is saying very much of anything, and there is no particular reason why anyone should. The morning goes quietly by in this way. Everything here is made of 4 or 5 things and no more. Cedar for the boat, light and easy to work and quick to rot if you let it. Bamboo for anything that has to be springy or hollow. Poles, frames, the ribs of a basket, rope of straw or of hemp, and tar, which goes on to everything that touches water and gets onto your hands and never entirely comes off them again, however long you stand there scrubbing at it. That is very nearly the whole of the list. The smell of the island is all of those things at once. Tar warming in the sun, wet hemp, cedar shavings, salt, wood smoke, and fish at every stage between alive and long dried. It is not a smell you notice unless you have been away from it for a while. Men who go up to the city and come back say they can smell the island from the water, and that it smells like coming home, which is more or less exactly what it does. You would never notice it yourself. The boat is the largest thing you own, and the largest thing you are ever going to own. It was built up the coast by a man whose family builds nothing else, from planks fitted edge to edge, and fastened with iron nails, and made tight with wedges and fibre. And it cost what a great many good days cost, gathered slowly over years. There is no version of your life, at any age you can remember, that does not have a boat somewhere in it. With care, it lasts a long time, long enough that a man may fish from the same hull for most of his working life and hand it on still sound. Without care, it does not. So there is always something to be done to it. Caulking to see to, a plank to keep an eye on, the well to keep clean, tar to renew before the season turns. You do all of these things well before they are urgent, because out on the water, urgent is already too late. What did not sell, and what was never going to sell fresh, has to be preserved, and there are only a few ways to do it. Salt is one. It comes in coarse and grey and damp, and it is not cheap, since making it takes fuel and time and a long stretch of shore, and so it is used with a certain care. Fish packed in salt will keep a long while, and will taste of salt forever. It is used on what will not dry, and on nothing else. Drying is the other way, and it costs nothing but weather. Split fish go up on frames above the tide line, opened flat, and stay there in the wind and the sun for days, turning from something soft into something hard and translucent, and almost weightless. The racks stand in rows all along the shore. Gulls take an interest and are discouraged. In a good drying week, the whole island is hung about with split fish like so much laundry, and smells of it. All of it depends on the wind holding fair. The small fish, the ones worth nothing at all at market, go into a pot. They are simmered slowly in soy and sweet rice wine, hours of it, over a low fire, until the liquid has gone thick and dark, and the bones have given up, and everything in the pot has become the same soft, sweet, salty thing. It keeps for weeks. It is eaten a spoonful at a time with rice, and it is very good, and it tastes of nothing else on earth. This is the smell of the island in the afternoon, drifting out of open doorways all along the row. Soy and sugar and fish going slowly darker in the pot. Every house makes it, and every house is quietly certain that theirs is the better one. Nothing about it is wasteful. A fish nobody would buy this morning becomes something a family will be eating through the whole of the coming month, and be glad enough of it when it comes. Nothing at all on this island is thrown away. It would be wrong to leave you with the impression that the fishing is the work and everything else is not. The pot, the salt, the drying racks, the mending, the weed, most of that is the women's, and it goes on all day and every day, whether the boats have had a good morning or a poor one. Their hands are as ruined by cold salt water as yours are, and by a good many more hours of it in the year than yours are. The children are out on the flats from the moment they can be trusted not to drown, and they are useful long before they are strong. They carry and sort and scare gulls off the racks and turn drying fish, and are sent up the row with messages. What they are actually doing is learning the tide and the marks and the knots by being near them constantly, so that none of it ever has to be sat down and formally taught to them. By the time any of it matters, they know it. At low water, the flats come out, a wide, brown, shining plain where the bay used to be, going out much further than you would think, printed all over with the tracks of birds. People walk out onto it with baskets on their arms. There are clams under there in great numbers, and getting them is a matter of a short rake, a bent back, and knowing what the small holes in the surface of the mud mean. The birds are out there doing the same thing, further down. It is slow, cold, wet work, and very nearly everybody does some of it because the clams are free and they are reliable in a way that fish are not. A net can come up empty. The flats are always there, twice every day, whatever the weather has been doing all week. In a bad stretch, the clams are the difference between a thin month and a hungry one, and everyone on the island understands that perfectly well, without ever once saying it aloud. The flats are what the island falls back on. Out in the shallows, there are long rows of brushwood stakes standing in the water, pushed in during the autumn and left there. Weed settles on them and grows through the cold months. And by now, at the very end of the season, the last of it is ready to come off. It is the coldest work of the whole year, and it is nearly finished for another 12 months. which is a thought well worth having while you are doing it. The cold gets deep into the bones of your hands. You go out to the stakes at low water and take the weed off them by hand into a basket floated alongside, and your hands are in the water the entire time. And the water in early spring is barely above ice. They go numb fairly quickly and then stop bothering you about it. It is a dark purple green, and it comes away in slippery sheets, and it smells more of the sea than anything else on the whole island does. You work along steadily. The basket fills slowly in the water beside you. This is not fishing, and nobody would confuse the two. But over a year, it may be worth more than a good deal of what comes out of the nets, and it happens in the season when the fishing is at its very thinnest, which is exactly why it matters so much. The stakes will be pulled later and stacked on the shore. Then there is a stretch of weeks with nothing standing in the shallows at all, and the water there looks strangely empty until you get used to it again. Ashore, the weed is washed and washed again in fresh water until it is clean and there is no grit left anywhere in it. Then it is chopped, a heap of it on a board, worked with a blade until it stops being leaves and becomes a dark green mash, wet and heavy and smelling powerfully of the shallows. This takes a long time, and the work is at least done sitting down, which counts for a good deal by this hour of the day. Then it is mixed with water in a tub until it is thin, and lifted out a measure at a time in a square wooden frame with a mat set into it, and spread and shaken flat, exactly the way paper is made, because it is being made the way paper is made, by people who learned it from paper. The frames are stood up in long rows along the shore to dry in the wind, and the sheets go from green to almost black as they dry. By evening, the sheets are dry, and they come off the mats stiff and thin and almost black, and they are stacked in tens, and they will go up to the city with everything else. In the city, they are toasted over a flame until they turn green again and go brittle, and eaten with rice or wrapped around it. That is the end of the story as far as the island is concerned, and nobody here follows it any further than that. It has gone into the city, and that is enough. The midday meal is not much, and it is not meant to be. Rice, which is the whole foundation of everything here, and a bowl of soup with whatever was cheap in it, and pickles, and a piece of fish that did not sell, grilled over the fire on a skewer until the skin blisters and lifts. You eat it quickly and without ceremony, sitting on the step with the bowl held close up under your chin, and then it is finished. There is a good deal more of the day to do. Tea afterwards, which is the real point of stopping at all, It is coarse tea, twigs and older leaves, nothing like what the city drinks, poured very hot and drunk slowly, and it does rather more for you than the food did. For a quarter of an hour, nobody expects anything of you. You sit. The pot ticks as it cools. Somebody down the row is hammering at something, unhurried, and the sound of it comes and goes on the wind all the while. Then somebody moves, and you get up. The afternoon on this island is the flattest part of the day, and it goes on a long time. The tide is out. The boats are up. The morning's work is finished, and the night's work has not begun. And in between, there is this, a wide, still salt-smelling stretch of hours in which almost nothing is required of anybody, and everybody finds something slow to do with their hands regardless. It is the same every day, and has been for a very long time. The light is flat and white, coming up off the water and off the flats together. Washing hangs. The children have gone somewhere else. Old men sit where they have sat for years, in the same places, out of the wind, mending something or not mending it. If you stopped and listened, you would hear water and wind in the drying frames, and a long way off the sound of the city, which never entirely stops, but which from here is only a low, steady murmur. There is a shrine at the end of the island, small and wooden and salt-worn to a soft, pale grey, standing where the ground runs out into the water. It is not grand, and nobody would ever come out here to see it. The wood has been scoured by wind and spray for so long that the grain stands up in ridges under your hand, and the whole of it leans very slightly, and has leaned that way for as long as anyone can remember. Nobody remembers who built it or when. People stop there on the way past without making any occasion of it. A moment, a bow, a clap, a coin sometimes, and then on. Nobody explains what they are asking for, and it would be a strange thing to ask them. Everything in the way people go to it suggests that it is less a matter of belief than of manners, of acknowledging, on the way out to the water, that the water is a great deal larger than you are. That seems to be quite enough for everybody. Some part of you is always reading the weather, and it never entirely switches off. Not even now, sitting still on a step with a bowl in your hands. The shape of the clouds and the direction they are travelling in, which is not always the direction the wind is going down here. The colour of the sky, where it meets the water in the west. Whether the far shore looks close, which is a bad sign, or properly far away, which is not. You do all of this without stopping what you are doing. The feel of the air, more than any of it. There is a heaviness that comes before bad weather, which you know in your face and in your chest well before you know it in your head. And the older men know it a day out. Nobody writes any of this down anywhere. It arrives in a boy over years of standing about while men look at the sky. And by the time he is grown, it feels like something he simply knows. Nobody could tell you when they learned it. The bay is shallow and mostly kind, but it is still water, and it has taken men off this island in the way that water takes men from every place like this. A wind that got up faster than anyone expected, a boat that was too far out, a night that turned bad. It has happened. It happened in your father's time, and once since then. And every one of the boats that went out this morning has come home. They always have. And there is nothing more to say about it. That is why they are counted. Nobody announces that they are doing it, and nobody here would call it a custom. But in the late afternoon, there are always 1 or 2 people on the shore with their eyes on the water, and everybody knows how many went out, and the number comes down as they come in. When the last of them is in, the shore quietly empties. Nothing is said. It happens exactly this way every day of the year. Then people go in to their suppers and think no more of it. There is other fishing than nets, and some of it takes almost nothing at all. Conger live in the mud and in holes, and in anything that offers a dark place to lie up in. And they want to be inside a tube rather more than they want to be anywhere else. And this is a weakness that has been used against them for a very long time. So you have tubes, lengths of bamboo, open at one end, weighted. Nothing else about the whole business is needed at all. You take them out on a line, spaced along it, and lay them on the bottom in the right sort of place. And then you leave them and go away and do something else entirely, which is the beauty of the whole arrangement. There is no skill in the waiting, and there is no work in it either. The bay does the work. You come back at the right state of the tide and lift the line and see what has moved in. It is the laziest fishing there is. A conger in a tube does not want to leave the tube, and mostly will not, even while the tube is coming up out of the water, which is a fact that sounds unlikely until you have watched it happen a few hundred times. They come up heavy and dark and rope-like and extremely strong. They are worth good money up in the city, where they are split and grilled over charcoal and sold in the street with a sweet dark sauce. You have never once eaten one in the street yourself. Then there are the lines, which are the simplest thing of all. A length of twine, a weight, a hook, and a small piece of something on the hook. Getting them ready is the sort of job that fills up the last of an afternoon. Sitting with a coil across your knee, running the line through your fingers, feeling for weak places, straightening a hook that has been pulled out of true, cutting bait small on a board with a short, worn blade. It fills the time perfectly well. The bait is whatever is worth nothing. Prawns too small to sell, a cut of shad, a clam broken out of its shell with the point of a knife. It is chopped down to pieces about the size of a thumbnail and kept in a bowl of seawater. And by the end of the job, your hands smell of it in a way that no amount of rinsing will do anything about before tomorrow. You stopped noticing that a great many years ago now. Nobody in this house would remark on it. There is a rhythm to baiting a line that makes the time disappear entirely. Hook, bait, set it down, and the next one. The coil grows steadily in the basket. Your eyes are on your hands, but your attention is somewhere a good way off. On the weather, on the tides you carry in your head, on nothing whatever in particular. When you look up, the light has moved a long way across the water without troubling to ask you. The afternoon has gone while you were sitting there. Late in the afternoon, you go out again, and this is a much smaller expedition than the morning was. The boat is light, and there is no net in it, only the tubes and the lines and a basket. You are not going far, out to where the tubes are lying, and then a little further to a place where the bottom changes, and there are usually 1 or 2 fish to be had on a hand line. The tide is just beginning to make. The bay in the late afternoon is a different colour and a different temperature, and behaves differently. And you would know the hour out here with your eyes shut. The water has warmed all day in the shallows, and it gives that warmth back now as the air above it cools. There is more haze than there was. The far shore has gone soft and blue. There is a light chop that was not there at midday, slapping under the bull. The boat lifts to it very slightly and settles again. You lift the tubes, and there is something in 2 of them, which is a fair enough afternoon. You reset them further along, in a place you have been meaning to try for a while. Then you take the boat across to the other ground and put the lines down and sit, feeling for the small, distinct knock that means a fish, which is not like the slow, steady drag of weed, and is not like the bottom either, and cannot be mistaken for them. Then you settle down to wait for it. Handlining is a slow, sitting, patient business, and there is a great deal of nothing in it. You catch a few. Each one comes up as a small, separate event. The knock, the lifting, the fish turning bright as it comes up into the light, and then it goes into the basket, and the line goes down again. The boat rocks. The sun is going down the sky behind the city, and the water has begun to go gold. The light is going quickly now, the way it does. The last hour of daylight over water is the best hour there is, and everybody who works on water knows it, and nobody makes anything of it. The light comes in almost flat now, and lies along the surface instead of falling onto it, so that every ripple has a bright edge and a dark one. The colour goes out of everything that is not water. Your own hands, lying on the oar, look a good deal older in this light than they did at noon. The city on the western shore has the sun behind it now, and has gone to a single dark shape with an edge of fire along the top of it. You can pick out the roofs. Smoke stands up from 1,000 evening fires and leans slowly away to the north. It is one of the largest cities in the world, and from here, at this hour, it is a low black line with light behind it, and nothing else. You have been inside it perhaps a dozen times in your life. Then the sun is down, and there's a stretch of perhaps a quarter of an hour when the light does not go so much as change, draining out of the west and leaving the sky higher and clearer and colder, blue-green above and orange low down, and the water underneath it lying perfectly flat and holding every one of those colours in a slightly duller version of itself. Nothing out here is moving at all, and nothing is going to. You sit still in the boat and let it happen. The first lamps come on in the city while you are watching, and you never see them arrive. You look, and there are none. And you look again a little later, and there are a few, and then more, until there is a long broken string of small yellow lights lying along the far shore, and a second string in the water underneath it, wobbling gently. From out here, the whole of it is entirely silent. It happens every evening. You have watched for it your whole life, and never once caught it. You pull the lines in and stow them. There's no hurry anywhere in it. The basket goes under the thwart, and the coil goes on top of it, and the oar goes over the stern, and the boat comes round towards the island, which is already no more than a shape, with 2 or 3 small fires on it. The chop has dropped away with the wind, and the water has gone smooth and heavy and slow, the way something does as it cools. You take your time over all of it. Rowing back in the last of the light is the part of the day that men remember when they are too old to do it anymore. There is nothing left to decide. The work is behind you, and the night's work has not started yet. And for as long as it takes to cross that stretch of water, you are simply a man in a boat going home, in the dark blue, with the lights of the city on your left hand. Nothing else is required of you at all. The island comes up black against what is left in the sky. There are lamps in the doorways now. You can smell the cooking from out on the water before you are anywhere near the stones. Soy and smoke and rice, and hear a voice, and a bucket set down somewhere. You bring the boat in and get her tied, and step off onto the stones, and the day is over, and the whole of it is behind you now. The night is a different thing altogether. The tide turns again in the evening, and that is what decides the night, exactly as it decided the morning. You have known since yesterday, roughly, when it would come, and you have arranged the whole day around it without ever quite thinking about it directly. Now it arrives. The water that has been filling the bay all afternoon stops filling it and hangs there, and then very slowly begins to go the other way. You feel the change before you look for it. It is time to start thinking about the night. There is an hour at the top of the tide when nothing moves at all. The water, neither coming nor going, lying up against the stones without any argument left in it. And that hour is one of the quietest things in this world. Then it begins. A piece of weed lifts and lies over the other way. A stick that had been sitting still starts to travel. The bay begins to empty itself out towards the sea, and it is time to go. You eat before you go out, and properly this time, because it will be a long while before you eat again, and the cold takes more out of you at night than the work does. Rice, hot, soup, some of the dark simmered fish out of the pot, pickles. It is the same food as at midday, but it matters rather more, and you take a good deal longer over it, sitting inside with the lamp lit for once, in no hurry at all. There is no hurry about any of it. Nobody says very much. The others in the house are settling down towards sleep at the same time as you are getting ready to leave, which is the ordinary shape of things in a house like this at this season, and has been for as long as you have been doing it. Somebody puts a hand on your shoulder in passing, without comment. You finish the tea. You set the bowl down, and from that moment on, you are working again, and the evening is over. The lantern is the most important thing you will carry tonight, and it gets the most attention accordingly. It is a wooden frame and paper, oiled against the spray, with a small dish inside it, and you fill the dish with oil and set the wick and trim it short so that it will burn steady and not smoke. A guttering lamp is worse than no lamp at all. You go over the paper carefully with your thumb, feeling for tears and thin places. It is a small job, and you never rush it. Then you light it, indoors, out of the wind, and the paper goes from grey to a warm yellow all at once. Oh, and the whole thing becomes immediately the brightest object in the room. You carry it out at arm's length. Outside in the dark, it is suddenly very small again, a soft-edged ball of light with a man somewhere behind it, and everything more than a few feet beyond the reach of it has gone completely and absolutely black. You go on down towards the water with it. Down to the boat again, and the stones are wet. and you know every one of them by foot, and could do it with your eyes shut. The lantern goes up onto its hook at the bow and sits there, swinging very slightly, putting a moving yellow patch onto the water below. The basket goes in. The net goes in. You untie the rope and push off with the oar against the stones, and the island quietly lets go of you. The lantern swings once and then steadies itself at the bow. There is a moment every night in the first few strokes when the shore is still close enough to get back to easily, and yet you are already out of it. Nobody has ever mentioned this to you, and you have never mentioned it to anybody either. It passes in a few seconds. After that, you are simply out on the water in the dark, which is where you have spent a good part of your life. And it is ordinary again. You settle down into the stroke and go on. The oar in still water at night makes a different sound than it makes in the day, or seems to, because there is nothing else at all to hear. A creak at the pin, a slow, soft swirl under the stern as the blade comes round, then the same again. It is a sound with no edges anywhere on it, and it will go on now, more or less unbroken, for as long as you are out here on the water. After a while, you stop hearing it at all, and then it is simply there. You do not have to think about the oar at all. Your body has the whole business of it, the twist at the end of each stroke, the shift of weight, the small correction that keeps the bow where you want it, and none of that ever reaches your head unless something has gone wrong. So there is a great deal of you left over out here, with very little to do, in the dark, for hours at a time. Mostly your thoughts go nowhere in particular at all. The water tonight is about as flat as it ever gets. There is no wind to speak of anywhere. The surface has that heavy, oiled, slightly rounded look it takes on when a night is truly still, so that it seems to lie a little higher than the land does. And the whole estuary is one enormous black sheet of it, with lights scattered around the edges of it, and a very few of them out in the middle of it. It is as good a night for this as you could ask for. Black is not really the right word for it. It is very dark, but it holds every light there is, and hands them back stretched out and wavering, so that a lamp a mile away arrives as a long, unsteady line reaching towards you across the water. There is a great deal more light out here than you would ever expect from the sky alone. Your own lantern makes much the largest of those lines, going straight down into the water beneath the bow. It goes down further than seems altogether reasonable. There are others out tonight. You can see 4, perhaps 5, scattered wide across the water, each one a small warm point with its own reflection hanging under it, and nothing else visible anywhere around them. Some of them are further out than you are going tonight, One is well over towards the far bank. They do not move about a great deal. From out here, each of them looks entirely alone, which is precisely what you must look like to them. You raise nothing to them, and they raise nothing to you. It is a good thing to see, and you always look for them. Not for company exactly, since you will not speak to any of them tonight, and may not even know which boats they are. It is more that the water is very large, and the dark makes it larger still, and those small lights out on it say that the ordinary world reaches this far, and that other men are also awake and cold and doing very much this same thing tonight. That is worth something at this hour of the night. What you are here for tonight comes up the river in spring, and only in spring, and only at night, and only for a few weeks together. They are small, a finger's length, no more than that, and clear, so clear that you can see the dark line of the spine straight through them, and they run in numbers that are hard to describe to anybody who has not stood over them with a light in his hand. There is nothing else in the whole bay quite like them. They come in on the tide in the dark, in loose clouds rather than in a shoal with any edge to it, moving up out of the bay and into the river mouth. Where exactly they will be on any given night is not something that anybody can tell you in advance. It has to do with the tide and the moon and how much fresh water is coming down, and a good deal else that nobody has ever satisfactorily explained. You go where you went last night, and you hope. And they come to light. That is the whole of the method, and it is a very old one. You put a light down onto the water, and they gather underneath it, and then you lift them out. Why they should do this is not a question anybody here bothers to ask. It is simply a property of the fish, like their being clear, and it is the reason there is a lantern burning on the bow of every boat out here tonight. It has been done in this way for a very long time. The net for them is nothing whatever like the morning's net. It is small and light enough to hold in one hand, and the mesh is so fine that it is closer to a cloth than to a net, because a fish that size will go straight through anything ordinary without ever noticing that it was there. It is set on a bamboo hoop with a long handle, and you have had this particular one for a good many years now. You made the handle for it yourself years ago now. A net that fine is a delicate thing, and it does not last forever. It tears on nothing at all. It rots if it is put away wet, and it goes brittle if it is dried too hard in the sun, and it has to be looked over every single time before it goes into the water. So you look at it now, holding it up into the lantern light and turning it slowly round, and it is sound. It will do for tonight, and for a good while yet. You stop the boat where you have decided to stop it and let it settle and bring the oar in. The lantern is already burning at the bow, and its light is already lying on the water. And now it is simply a matter of waiting for the light to do the work for you. You lower the net in on the dark side, out of the brightness, and hold it there just under the surface, and keep as still as you can manage. Then there is nothing to do at all but wait. The handle rests along your forearm. The net hangs in the water below the surface, invisible from above, doing nothing at all. Under the lantern, the water is warm brown gold, shot through with the moving shapes of your own arm and the side of the boat, and everything outside that circle is nothing whatever. You settle your weight down into the boat. You are going to be sitting in more or less exactly this position for a considerable part of the night. You have done it 1,000 times before. Waiting is not something you do out here, so much as it is the thing itself. In the morning, there was hauling and sorting and rowing and selling. And here there is only sitting in a boat holding a stick with a net on the end of it, watching a circle of lit water for hours. Men who cannot do this do not fish at night. You can do it. You have been able to do it since you were a boy. It is a thing a man either has or has not. It is not boredom, although it would certainly look like boredom from the outside. Your attention is on the water the whole time, but lightly. The way it is on a road you know well while you're walking down it, thinking about something else entirely. Things drift through the light. A leaf, a scrap of weed. Once something larger goes under, unhurried and does not come back. You do not move the net for any single one of them. None of it is what you are sitting out here for. The city is over there the whole time, and you can see a good deal more of it now than you could at dusk. The lamps have thickened along the bank. There are boats moving over there with lights of their own, going somewhere, and bridges picked out by whatever is burning at either end of them. It is not close. It is close enough that on a still night, the sound of it comes across the water to you. It always does, on a night as still as this one. And it does come, not as anything you could put a name to, but as a low, continuous grain in the air underneath the silence, made of a great many people being awake or asleep in wooden houses very close together. Sometimes something rises briefly up out of it and then sinks back. A dog. A voice raised somewhere over there. Music once, from the far bank, thin and cheerful and distant, and gone again almost before you have finished turning your head towards it. Then a bell sounds across the water. One deep note from a temple somewhere on the far bank, and it hangs there a long time before it fades out. And a moment later, another, further off, and then another, and then another. as the hour goes across the city, from one temple to the next, each of them a little fainter and a little later than the one before, until at last it has passed away out of hearing altogether, somewhere on the far side of the city. That is how you know the time out here, and it is quite enough. Nobody on this water owns anything that measures an hour. The bells come, and you count them without deciding to count them, and file the number away somewhere at the back of your mind, and go on watching the light on the water. The hours are longer at night in this season of the year. There is a great deal of the night still to come. You settle back down to the water and the light. Then the light changes. It is not dramatic, and if you were not watching for it, you would very likely miss it. The gold under the lantern goes slightly grainy, and there is a kind of shimmer in it that was not there a moment ago, as though the water itself had somehow thickened. That is them. They have come in under the light, and they are turning there, packed and slow and patient, holding themselves in the brightness. You do not move, and you do not look away from it. You do not hurry. Hurrying is how a man loses them. You bring the net up through the water, slowly and steadily, keeping it level the whole way, until the hoop breaks the surface inside the ring of light, and then it is out, and dripping and heavy in a way that a net that size has no business being. You bring it inboard over your knees. The handle bends under the weight. There is a very great deal in it. You can feel the weight of them through the handle. In the lantern light, they are astonishing, and this is the one part of the night that never quite becomes ordinary. A net full of small, clear fish, wet and glittering and sliding over one another, each with a dark eye and a dark thread of spine, and the whole of the rest of it as clear as the water they came out of. They look less like fish than like something made of glass. You tip them into the basket, then the net goes back down into the water again. The river has a smell at night that it does not quite have in the day, or that you do not quite notice in the day, and it comes up off the surface when the air is cold and still like this. It is green and mineral and faintly sweet, with mud somewhere underneath it, and salt somewhere underneath that. It is not the smell of the sea, and it is not the smell of the land. It is the smell of the place where the two of them meet. You have breathed it your whole life, and it means nothing in particular to you, in the way that the smell of a house means nothing at all to the people who live inside it. But it is certainly there tonight, stronger than it usually is, because the air is not moving at all, lying low on the water in much the same way the mist does, and you notice it once, quite distinctly, and then you stop noticing it again, almost immediately afterwards. That is how it is with a place you were born in. There is blossom on the banks upriver at this time of year. You cannot see it from out here in the dark, and you would not go up to look at it. And yet it is something you know about the season, in the same way you know about the tide. People go up there in the daytime to sit underneath it. You have seen them from the water, a great many of them, out on the grass in the afternoons. It is not a thing that concerns you particularly. By now, some of it has begun to come down. It gets onto the water, and it travels. And on a night like this one, you find it in the lantern light without ever having looked for it. 2 or 3 pale petals, turning slowly on the surface, inside the ring of gold, going past the boat, going out towards the bay. You do not think anything about them. They go by, and the light closes up again behind them. More of it will come down before the week is out. The cold at this hour is not the cold of the air. It comes up off the water, through the boards of the boat, into your feet, and then it works upwards slowly and patiently over hours until it is in your knees and in your back. There is no wind in it at all. It is simply the water, which has been cold since winter and will not be warm again until midsummer, taking the heat out of you a little at a time. There is no arguing with it. You know how to sit with it. You keep your hands inside your sleeves when they are not doing anything, and you shift your weight every now and then before anything has a chance to stiffen. And every so often you stand up and work your shoulders and sit back down. The cold is not an emergency. It is one of the conditions of the work, like the dark and the waiting. And you have been managing all 3 of them for 30 years. It has never once occurred to you to complain of it. The oar lies along the gunwale, where you put it, dripping more and more slowly, and then, not at all. It has done its part for now. There is a small pool of water underneath the blade that catches the lantern and holds a piece of yellow light in the bottom of the boat. And it trembles when you move and settles again when you stop. And you look at that instead of at anything else at all for a good long while. There is nothing else out here to look at. The boat turns, very slowly, on nothing that you can feel. It has been pointing one way, and after a while, it is pointing another. And the lights on the far shore have moved round accordingly, and the city that was ahead of you is now off to one side. This happens continuously out here, and you correct it when it matters to correct it, and leave it alone when it does not. Tonight, it does not matter in the least. You let her go round wherever she likes tonight. The other boats drift as well, and over an hour or 2, the distances between all of you change without anybody having decided anything about it. One that was far off is closer now. One that was closer has gone somewhere else. You watch this happen the way you would watch clouds, with no particular interest and without any expectation that it will come to anything. because it will not come to anything, and it never has, and it never does. It is restful to watch for that exact reason. Once, a voice comes across the water. It is not directed at you, and there are no words left in it by the time it arrives. Only the shape of a man saying something short to another man, quite far off, in that flat, carrying way that voices travel over still water at night. Then nothing at all. Nobody answers. Or if somebody does, you do not hear it. The water closes over the sound and goes back to being silent again. It does not occur to you to call out. Later, from somewhere out in the dark, somebody is singing. It is very quiet, and it is not meant to reach anybody at all. The men here sing the songs their families brought east with them generations ago, from the West Country, and the words in them are older than the island is, and they are about a coast that none of these men has ever seen, with different weather in it, and different hills, and a different sea altogether. You do not know the words yourself, not all of them. Nobody thinks of it as being anything much. It is simply what a man sings to himself when he is alone in a boat at night, and the singing keeps him warm, and it keeps him awake. The tune wanders off. It stops in the middle of a line and starts again somewhere else entirely. You listen without listening to it, and after a while you notice that it has stopped, and you could not possibly say when it did. It does not matter in the least that it has stopped. The bells go again, and again after that, and the night has got into the middle of itself, which is the part of it that has no shape at all. The tide has been running steadily out for a long time now. Whatever was going to happen tonight has mostly already happened. There is nothing ahead of you now, but more of this, and then the turn for home, and both of those are still a good way off yet. So there is nothing to do but go on sitting. This is the deepest and the quietest part of it. The city has gone almost entirely dark along the far shore, with only a few lights left burning here and there, where somebody is still awake, and that grain of sound that lay under everything earlier has thinned away to nothing whatever. There is you, and the lantern, and the water underneath it, and the 4 small lights out there that have not gone home either. Nothing else at all. It is a very large amount of nothing, and it is peaceful. The fish come more slowly now. There was an hour earlier on when the light was thick with them, and the net came up heavy every single time, and that hour has passed. Now you lift, and there is a little. You lift again after a longer wait, and there is less than that. This is how it always ends. Not stopping, but thinning out over a long stretch, until it would be a slightly silly thing to go on doing. You give it a little longer anyway, out of habit. You are not disappointed by this, and it would not occur to you to be. The run is the run. It comes up on the tide, and it goes out with it. And it does the same thing tonight that it did last night and will do again tomorrow. And a man might as well be disappointed in the moon. The basket has a good weight to it. It has been an ordinary night, which is the best kind there is. You will take an ordinary night and be glad of it. You lift once more, mostly to be sure of it, and it comes up very nearly empty. A dozen of them, perhaps, glinting in the mesh, and a leaf. You tip them in with the rest. Then you hold the net up out of the water for a moment and let it run. And you know, while you are doing it, that this is the last one, although you have not actually gone so far as to decide anything about it yet. Your body has decided the thing before you have. The net comes inboard, and you shake it out and lay it along the thwart to drain, spread out flat so that it will not sit folded and wet in a heap all night. There is nothing further to be done with it before morning. Your hands are stiff and slow with the cold, and they take a good deal longer over the folding than they would at noon, and you let them take exactly as long as they need to take over it. There is no hurry left anywhere in the night. Then you take up the oar again, and the boat comes slowly round, and you point her at the island. You cannot see the island. You know precisely where it is. It is a matter of the far shore's lights, standing in a certain relation to you, and the run of the tide underneath the boat, and something else besides that you would not be able to explain to anybody who ever thought to stop and ask you about it. You have never once in your life got it wrong. The first strokes are hard. Everything has gone cold and set while you are sitting still, and it takes a while to come back. A dozen strokes, then 2 dozen, and then the warmth arrives in your shoulders and your back, and the movement stops being a decision you have to keep making. After that, it is easy again. The tide is going your way. There is no reason at all to hurry any of it, and so you do not hurry. The island comes slowly nearer in the dark. The water on the way in is like nothing at all. There is not a breath of wind now, and the surface has gone completely smooth, and every light on it is doubled. The far shore's lamps, and the lanterns of the other boats coming in behind you, and your own up at the bow, each of them with a twin hanging underneath it, joined at the waterline, so that the whole lot of them look like so many small, bright hourglasses. Nothing at all disturbs any of it tonight. Your own reflection travels with you the whole way, a long, unbroken column of gold going straight down into the black, moving when you move, breaking into pieces where the oar disturbs it, and closing up again behind. You have seen this same thing on every night of every spring of your entire life. It is the ordinary appearance of the world at this hour, and it is also quietly, beautiful, and both of those things are perfectly true at the same time. You have never said so to anybody. The island comes up out of the dark as a low shape with nothing lit anywhere on it. Everyone is asleep. You come in on the last of the ebb, which puts you further down the stones than you would like, and you take the boat in slowly and let her touch and step out into water that is over your ankles and colder than the air is. The stones are slick underfoot at this state of the tide, and you go up them carefully. The water is very cold indeed. You tie her up with the same knot in the same place, in the dark, entirely by feel. The lantern comes down off its hook. There is still oil in it, and it is still burning, and you leave it burning while you do the last few things, because putting it out would mean finding your way up the stones in the dark, and there is no sense whatever in doing that when the oil is very nearly spent anyway. So it goes on burning for a few minutes more. The basket comes up out of the boat, and it is heavier than it looks, and you carry it up the stones on your hip. The fish inside it are still now. They will go up to the city at first light, and the price for them will be good, because they are what the season is, and because everybody in the city wants them, and because there are only ever a very few weeks of them in the whole of the year. None of that is anything to do with tonight. You set the basket down in the cold place by the wall, with water over them and something laid across the top. And that is that dealt with. And it is not your concern again until the morning. The net goes up under the eaves where the air can get at it. The oar goes inside. It takes 4 or 5 minutes altogether. And then there is nothing left anywhere that has to be done tonight, by you or by anybody else. You stand a moment on the step in the dark. The house is dark and warm, or warmer than outside was, which is all that warm means at this hour of the night. Everyone is asleep, and the sound of it is in the room. You take off what is wet, which is very nearly everything, and hang it where it will dry, and you move quietly, and the floor is familiar under your feet, and you do not need any light at all for a single part of it. The room is exactly as it always is, and always has been. Then the mat and the quilt pulled up, and the extraordinary relief of lying flat after a whole night of sitting still in the cold. Your feet ache. Your hands are still not quite your own. The cold comes out of you slowly, in waves, and each wave leaves you a little further into the warmth than the one before it. And you lie there in the dark and let it happen without doing anything at all to help it along. It takes a long time, and you do not mind. And now, nothing is asked of you, not by the tide, which will do what it does whether or not anybody is watching. Not by the boat, which is tied up and safe. Not by the city across the water, which will buy the fish in the morning without needing you to think about it now. There is nothing left anywhere in the world that requires you to be awake. And there has not been anything for some little while now. Not by anybody in the house, who are all of them asleep. The bells will go again in a while, somewhere off across the water, and you will not hear them. Outside, the tide is turning at the very bottom of itself, and the first grey of the morning is still a long way off yet. But it is coming, the way it comes every morning, without any need of you at all. The water goes on moving past the island in the dark, the way it has all night, and you are already asleep.